name's Wes Davis. I'd like for you to call me Wes. My title is the Director of Technical Services at the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. You asked me one more thing, my area of expertise. Well, I hate to say I'm an expert at anything. I do know a little bit about the HVAC industry, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning industry.
The first one will be, does shading the outside air conditioner for a central air system help in any way?
It's not statistically impactful. Any HVAC professional that's been working on a system outside and a cloud passes over, they may notice that after a moment or two, the sun will have been blocked and the head pressure of the system will have gone down a bit. Not very impactful. And I also need to clarify what we mean by improving the performance, because there's the efficiency of the equipment, how well it converts electricity into cool air, as well as how well it's performing as a system. And so the short answer is still not in a statistically relevant way. The Florida Solar Energy Center did a study a few years ago, and their results showed that in some instances there was no impact. In one instance, there was a 3% change in the amount of electricity consumed by the unit. And in another instance, there was, I think, an 18% decrease in the amount of electricity consumed by the unit, given the different types of equipment and the shading used. Now, with that said, if people are going to try and cover their systems, provide shade, they need to be very, very careful, because I've seen some images of people taking like a tent used for a picnic or a beach umbrella and putting that next to their heating or their outdoor unit. And there's a real potential for air to recirculate, and that can cause many more problems than it helps solve.
What about for window units designed to cool a single room?
Right, same thing. And there's no performance data published by manufacturers that shows this unit performs this way under these conditions with the sun shining, and performs another way when it's under cover from clouds or other ways of blocking the solar radiation from the sun.
We've read
nothing to support that. Right.
Sorry, you were saying, can you repeat that part?
I was going to say, there's nothing published by the manufacturers that supports it performs one way with the sun shining and another way when it's under shade from the solar radiation. And if I could tack on one bit of advice or some recommendations, to your point, it's been hot. People are trying to do what they can to help stay cool. Window air conditioners are a packaged unit. I mean, they're confined and restricted, and they sit through the wall. You want to make sure that you got a good tight gasket seal around that, so there's not any outdoor leakage. And for people in the South, or people that have ducts in their attics, very important to make sure that they're sealed and well insulated, and they have good airflow through the equipment and through those duct systems. A lot of times the equipment's performing pretty well, but the conditioned air is not being delivered into the living space because of duct leakage or poor insulation or restricted ducts that don't allow that conditioned air to get to be delivered into the space efficiently.
We've read some sources saying that, say, shading using trees might help, or sources say it shouldn't make too much of a difference. What do you think?
Same thing. Florida Solar Energy Center did the study. I can share a copy of the study, but the short answer is it was not a statistically relevant change in the performance. This is wattage, this is the amount of energy consumed, and less about how much heat was removed from the air and delivered into the space. It's just not that impactful.
Same thing if we move the AC to the shadier side of the house.
Right. Same thing. It's always a good idea. My house, my heat pump happens to be on the east side of the house. So as the sun moves around during the day, it moves into a shadier and shadier situation. But the research shows that the impact of the solar radiation is minimal. I don't want to try and make something that's not there.
You mentioned something when you were talking about putting the people that put the umbrella on top of the unit. What are other ways that shading the AC can actually hurt it?
That's probably the biggest one. And it's really not so much the shading, it's the recirculating of the air. So I pull outdoor air. What's the outdoor temperature where you are?
Right now it's 85.
85. So I'm pulling 85-degree air. And the way a heat pump or an air conditioner works in the cooling cycle is I make the refrigerant really, really, really hot. And as that 85-degree air crosses it, it actually cools it down. And that heat is absorbed and discharged typically out the top of the unit, but sometimes out the side. And so if it comes out the top and I've got an umbrella or a tarp or a tent over it, that heated air gets funneled back around. And now I don't have 85-degree air going across that coil. It might be 86, 7, 8, 9, 90. It keeps going up. And the discharge temperature keeps going higher, and it's just a vicious circle. And the whole time, the indoor units were just not able to provide cool refrigerant. And I'm using that term loosely but it's a subcooled refrigerant to go inside to help cool the house.
One more question. Does closing the interior doors help or hurt your AC efficiency operation? Like, can you explain what happens when you close your doors when the AC is running?
Sure. So the room you're in, I presume on the floor, the wall, or the ceiling, there's a grill, and we've got cold air coming out of it. Or maybe you've got a window unit. But let's go with something in the ceiling, that has cold air coming out of it. There should be another grill somewhere else that is taking air out. I see in your office, the doors are all closed, and that's fine. But when that cool air comes in, it needs a way to move back to the equipment to be recirculated so it can be delivered back into your office. And when doors are closed, if there's no dedicated grill to provide that pathway back to the equipment so it can be cooled or heated again, that does hinder or hamper performance.
So it is better to keep circulation, like the doors open so the air circulates. Is that what you mean?
Or have a grill in your office that provides that pathway. And sometimes doors can be undercut. So I just cut the bottom of the door a little bit. Many homes have that as a functionality to provide that return air pathway. But the short answer is we just need a return air path, whether that's an open door or a return grill.
Wes, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think it's important for the audiences to know or to understand, especially now that we are facing this terrible heat wave and people are just trying to stay cool, basically?
Absolutely. I think it's very important to make sure that the system's working well. A lot of times, maintenance is ignored. And so we've found, and we're doing more research, there's some studies underway to evaluate how many homes in America have an oversized. We've got too much capacity, too much cooling capacity, or too much heating capacity. But we believe that that's a predominant case. People want to oversize their systems, and they're less comfortable because they haven't maintained it, or they don't have good airflow. They've got ducts that are restricting air, and so I've got a whole lot of capacity that I can't push through the ducts to deliver into the space. Maintenance and a good distribution system and a well-insulated distribution system are vital to getting the most out of the equipment that you've got.
How often should we do this maintenance?
Great question, and it depends. Some systems require very little oversight. They were designed, well installed, and by design, I mean someone looked at your home and evaluated its needs and said, I need this much heating and this much cooling, and I selected equipment to provide that much. We have some standards that cover that. I could bore you to tears with it, but it was designed well, it was installed well, and when they left, it was operating well. Those systems may require very little maintenance. And especially as systems get older, they need a little more attention. It also depends on where you live. If you have problems with insects, bees, wasps, etc., clustering around, getting in and messing with electrical components, those need to be taken care of, and or rodents, animals, etc. Some people have more than others. We talked about shade. If I've got trees, I used to live in the South, pine trees, those pine needles or leaves falling down at the top of the unit, that needs to be cleaned out. The indoor equipment needs to be clean. Good filters help promote clean components. But if you don't have good filters, then make sure your equipment is cleaned and the components are operating at or like or near like new efficiency.